How long have you been stuck at 800 elo? What if I told you that you are making easy to fix mistakes that can get you to that 1000 elo that you've always been dreaming of? We are going to go over 3 tips and tricks to help you get to that 1000 elo goal. Tip number 1 is going to be focusing on the basic fundamentals of chess. If you are thinking about these basic principles during your games, this is going to put you way ahead of most beginners you come across. We can make an entire video about the basic fundamentals of chess that is hours long. We are briefly going to talk about developing your pieces, king safety, fighting for the center of the board, and pawn structure. Okay, so when I talk about fighting for central control, I'm talking about these 4 squares. If we gain control of these 4 squares early on, we are going to have a lot more options and opportunities than our opponents mid to late game. For instance, I play the Vienna. The whole point of this pawn is throwing it into the center, into one of those 4 squares to fight for central control. A lot of times it'll be answered by this, and then I do this. I'm attacking d5 while also defending e4, 2 of these center squares. And a lot of times they'll answer with this, or they'll answer with this. They've got eyes on multiple points in the middle. Let's say, oh, I don't know why I don't have a pawn right here. Let's say you don't necessarily know openings. So you just open like this. If your opponent does something like this, just take the center. It's always a good rule of thumb. You're attacking all of these squares and you have all of this control. And after this, you can just play normal chess. Just develop your pieces, defend your pieces, come up with a plan and attack. Okay, so briefly going over pawn structure, and some of the things that pawn structure is going to affect are such things like an open and closed position. If you look at this board, it's a very closed off position. It's very hard for some pieces to get from one side of the board to the other without playing very slowly. Another thing to look at with pawn structure in this kind of position is how it affects both sides. For instance, I like black's position actually much better, even though they're similarly set up. I don't really like them castling over here based on how many pawns are already pushed up. Black can slowly work their way in, and I also don't like them castling queenside because of all of the threats that black has on this left side of the board. It's dangerous for white to kind of get pieces up this way, and it's hard to get some of the pieces up this way to attack the king because they have so many weapons looking this way. So in this kind of position, white actually might have to move up the right side of the board, which can be done, but it's again going to be a very slow fight. And just one more quick thing about pawn structure. So looking at this, again, I just kind of threw some pieces on the board, but if you look here, the pawn structure early game really affects the end of the game. So white has 3 connected pawns. White can use these together to protect each other up the board and try and promote, whereas black has 2 pieces together and then 2 isolated pawns. Both sides have equal material, but white is going to have a lot better luck promoting one of these pieces than black. It's not to say that black can't win this. Black can definitely win this position, but it's going to be a lot harder based on how these pawns are set up. Because if the king tries and go here to help out here, these pieces are going to be easy pickings, and white can kind of just slowly move the pieces up the board with the king's help, of course. So now we're going to be talking about king safety. I brought up a game that I played a few days ago. I was playing the black pieces, talking about king safety. Technically, if you have a structure like this, you're going to be pretty safe. And when the king is still in the center of the board, it's most likely in most games not going to be safe as the king that is castled. But if you start to look at both sides and what's going on with your king, what can attack your king, what can make your king weak, you'll start to see, oh wow, I actually have a lot of weaknesses. Whereas you look at white, white can't really get to my king. Even though it's still in the center of the board and their king is kind of tucked in behind some pawns, my king is actually much safer because I can get to his king and he has no good way yet of being able to get to mine. So even if it seems like your king is safer based on the pawn structure, take a look at the whole board, see what's going on, and take that into consideration. Okay, so when we're talking about developing our pieces, there's a lot that can take place, but to keep it simple for the beginners, the thing that you need to think about when developing your pieces as a beginner, a good rule of thumb is to move a different piece every move. For instance, let's say I play my normal opening, I play e4, and my opponent plays Scandinavian, and I just, for some reason, I throw this knight up here. My opponent does this, and then I'm just bouncing around trying to get out of the way, and let's say I do this, and now I'm here. Now I go here, and now I'm bouncing back because the bishop was attacking me. Let's say I move this pawn up. All of a sudden, black has a huge advantage. These are all the squares that black is attacking and controlling with their pawns. And all I've done for the past 4 or 5 moves is hop around with my knight. It's a good rule of thumb to move a different piece every move. And please, 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 if you are a newer player, do not start bringing your queen out to do some fancy stuff. Unless you have some amazing trick or something that you love to do every game, eventually it's not going to work. Eventually you're going to get your queen stuck because people know what they're doing, and you're going to lose your queen in the first 5 moves of the game. And then after that, you're just fighting an uphill battle for the entire game, and it is not worth it. When you are developing your pieces, try to move a different piece every time. As we talked about earlier, try to develop your pawn structure. Try to develop your knight, your bishop, so that they take central control, so that they are giving you mobility in the later parts of the game. Do not allow your opponent to develop all their pieces and take central control. These are just small things that you need to start thinking about. You need to start having some reason behind your moves. Okay, so now that we're done talking about the basic fundamentals of chess, we are going to move on to your biggest problem, and it is not thinking about your opponent's moves. When you start to move your pieces around willy-nilly, you're aggressive, you're not thinking about what your opponent is trying to do, and 90% of the time, that is going to be the reason that you lose. One of the biggest things that improved my chess game was when I am calculating a sequence, I never end that sequence on my move. You always want to end the sequence on what your opponent is going to do in return to what you are doing, unless the game is ending. That is just a good rule of thumb to follow. I guarantee if you start thinking about your opponent's moves and ending your calculation on their move, what they are going to do in return, you are going to win more chess games. Tip number 3 is to start playing some chess puzzles. Some people hate them, some people love them. I think chess puzzles really helped with how I look at the game. It really helps you start to learn pattern recognition. So when a certain situation comes up in a chess game, you're going to know what to do because you've already faced it before. You've already seen it in multiple puzzles. So instead of wasting 30, 40, 50 seconds on one move, you instantly know what to do. Puzzles aren't going to make the biggest difference in your game, but they are going to add to your tool bag, and they are going to help you get out of that beginner bracket. Thank you guys for watching. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful. If you guys have any other ideas for videos I should make or tutorials, please let me know in the comment section below.